Happy Halloween, crafty friends! This is Juliana Michaels, and I'm delighted to have you join me here on my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm sharing how I created this Halloween banner for the Tim Holtz Sizzix Halloween 2023 Live. I'm going to take you step by step through how I created all the components for each panel. If you're interested in the supplies I've used to create this banner, you can find links to them in the description box below. When you shop through those links, it supports me, and I really appreciate that so very much. And as always, there is a blog post available with more photos if you're interested in looking at the banner in more detail. Now let's get on with the making. To create this banner, I'll be working with the Edison Colorize Thinlits die set, the big Frights Thinlits die set, and the tailored Thinlits die sets by Tim Holtz and Sizzix. I'll be using the tailored die set to help get my jack-o'-lantern gents ready for Halloween. For the base of each banner, I'll also be using the Tapestry embossing folder by Tim Holtz and Sizzix, and the Decorative trim Thinlits by Tim Holtz. I'll be using various Distress Oxide inks in Villainous Potion, Crackling Campfire, Fossilized Amber, Rusty Hinge, Forest Moss, Twisted Citron, Black Soot, and Frayed Burlap. I'll also be using textured cardstock in black, green, purple, a dark orange, and a lighter orange that coordinate with the Distress Oxide inks. Now I'm going to share how I transform the solid cardstock to create a more distressed and spooky effect using the ink smooshing technique. Off camera, I die cut the various pieces to create Edison from colored cardstock. To get started, I'm taking the base layer of Edison, which I cut from a lighter orange cardstock. I then smushed the Fossilized Amber Distress Oxide ink pad onto my craft mat. I spritz it with water to activate the ink, and then I smush the paper into the ink. This is why it's called the ink smooshing technique. I repeat the smooshing until I like how much ink is on the paper. I then use my heat tool to dry the paper. Now I'm repeating the ink smooshing with frayed burlap. I only want small areas of it onto the paper, so I actually use my paper towel to remove some of the ink from my craft mat. I then smush the paper into the ink and repeat this smooshing until I'm happy with the ink coverage. I then use my heat tool to dry the paper. Next, I take the second layer of Edison, which I cut from orange cardstock, and this time I ink smush it into Crackling Campfire Distress Oxide ink and then dry it with my heat tool. I want to make this paper a little bit darker in the areas where it will show after it's placed below the top layer. And to do this, I use a foam blending tool to add more Crackling Campfire Distress Oxide ink to those areas. For the top layer of Edison, I do the ink smooshing using Rusty Hinge Distress Oxide ink and just repeat the same process as I did before, and then dry the paper with my heat tool. To add some distress to this layer, I also do some ink smooshing with Frayed Burlap Distress Oxide ink. And then to help the top layer stand out even more, I use a foam blending tool to ink the edges with Walnut Stain Distress ink. I then assemble the layers using Distress Collage Medium for my adhesive. To save some time, I like to leave smaller die cuts in the paper I cut them from. These pieces are the hats and bow ties from the tailored die set. I adhered strips of mint tape to the backside of the paper to help hold the die cuts in place, and this allows me to dip and smush them all at once, instead of having to do each die cut separately. Next, I'm going to do some ink smushing for the hat and bow tie using Frayed Burlap Distress Oxide ink. I love how the oxide really pops on the black cardstock. Here I'm ink smushing the band that goes on the hat. I wanted it to be a different color, so here I'm using Villainous Potion for this band. I then do another one using Twisted Citron. On the finished banner, I end up with two of the hats having purple bands and one with the green. I then repeat this process for the bow ties using Twisted Citron and Villainous Potion because, of course, my jack-o'-lantern gents need to coordinate. Here's a look at the assembled Edison as well as the hats and bow ties. I also die cut some spiders from black glitter cardstock. I then assembled each of the pumpkins using Distress Collage Medium and adhered the pumpkins and bow ties with a small piece of foam tape to add some dimension. look at my 3 jack-o'-lantern gents dressed and ready for Halloween. Next, I used the big Frights die set to cut Boo and Eek from purple and green cardstock. I used Forest Moss for the ink smushing on the Eek. I then repeat the ink smushing on the purple Boo using Villainous Potion. When it came time to assemble the banner though, I ended up creating a purple Eek just to make things a little more balanced. I die cut the base layer for both words from black cardstock and ink smushed it into frayed burlap Distress Oxide ink. Before assembling the words, I inked the edges of them with walnut stained distress ink and then adhered the layers together with Distress Collage Medium. To create the banner, I took 5 pieces of Distress watercolor paper and cut them to 4 by 5¼ inches and embossed them using the Tapestry embossing folder. Next, I took a black soot Distress Oxide ink pad and rubbed it over the surface of the embossed paper to highlight the embossed design. Next, I took a distress sprayer filled with water and pulled the trigger slowly to create large water droplets over the inked panel and to activate the ink. I then dried the ink with my heat tool. To finish off each panel, I took the embossed paper and inked the edges with walnut stained distress ink. I then ink smushed a piece of purple cardstock using Villainous Potion Distress Oxide ink and die cut it into strips using the Tim Holtz Decorative Trims die set. I adhered one of these strips to the back side of each panel so that 1/4 inch of it would hang below the bottom of the panel and then trimmed it to length. I then added some machine stitching around the outer edge using black thread. Next, I adhered each panel to a piece of black cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½ inches. On both of the word panels, I dressed them up by adding some of the small icons from the Big Frights die set. I cut these icons from silver and black glitter cardstock and adhered them with foam tape. To assemble the banner, I added eyelets to the top corner of each panel. Then for the string, I took a piece of seam binding and dyed it using black soot distress spray stain. And there you have it, a frightfully fun Halloween banner perfect for decorating your haunt this Halloween season. I hope you enjoyed seeing how this came together and are inspired to create your own. Until next time, stay crafty, my friend. Thanks so much for watching. I'm truly grateful for you. I was wondering if you could do me a quick favor and subscribe to my channel or leave me a thumbs up or a comment. If you're feeling extra generous, I'd love for you to share about my channel with your friends. All of these things help out us YouTubers so much, and it would mean so much to me to have your support.